I'd like to thank Ashley and the team for inviting me to speak today. When I was asked, I felt impelled to tell my story. There were 4 of us in my vehicle at the time of the accident: myself, my 2 sons, Benjamin and Andrew, and my daughter-in-law, Steph. I don't know why the other driver decided to do what he did, but I must accept that fate had a hand in it. I am just grateful that my family and I survived it, even though I have different abilities to before. At some stage in people's lives, they will need mental health assistance to digest, accept and move on. The earlier, the better. Life is too short to hold on to grudges. You can always wait on an apology that you will never receive, or just accept that one is never coming and move on. In the days and months after the accident, the staff of Royal North Shore's ICU and orthopaedic wards were more concerned with treating my physical injuries than any mental trauma. I knew that I'd had an accident, and I knew a lot of the night was a blur. I knew my family were alive with varying injuries, and initially I was told that Ben and Steph were up in the wards and Andrew was in the same ICU ward as myself. While in ICU, I made a promise to one of my youngest son's friends that I would be at their wedding in late November and that I would be walking at their wedding. Although at the time I made the promise, I was so high on drugs I probably would have promised anything to anyone. During my stay at Royal North Shore, I received the best treatment in the world for my physical injuries. My family, friends and the nurses in what was then the Orthopaedic Ward 7A always put my needs first. My sister Di, my Aunt Pam and my extended family kept me fed, lifting my spirits when I struggled, and brought me a bunch of friends to encourage me. Courage still goes everywhere with me. Music was a comfort and inspiration to me through this time, and the nurses would consistently hear me singing the chorus of Pink's song's Try in the early hours of the morning. When people from outside the hospital started to press me for answers about the accident, I started suffering nightmares. Triggering nightmares of the accident. These would leave me in cold sweats, screaming and thrashing about in the bed. This wasn't at all conducive to my physical healing. The hospital's social worker put a stop to the phone calls very quickly when one time I became hysterical and my surgery had to be cancelled for that day. And I would like to express here now that the choice of words spoken and the tone of the words that you use count when speaking to anyone who has had a traumatic or multiple injuries. Imagine how you would feel if it was yourself or a family member lying there being pressed to confront the horrors of an accident before you ask questions next time. Now moving forward, and let's just say that over the past 12 years, I have endured over 27 operations and multiple stays in hospital, days and days of doctors and allied health appointments. This is a barrier that constantly happens. But I choose to make the rest of my life the best of my life. It was 10 months after the accident before I found a regular psychologist, Simon, who treated me for close to 12 months before he left. My GP recommended that I start with Ashley, and he has been my psychologist since May 2016. We started off slowly because there was so much to unjumbled, as I needed assistance with pain management. I was dealing with the new discovery that my right ankle foot had no normal blood flow and it would be at risk for the rest of my life. And of course, my PTSD. Over time, he has given me the tools to be able to manage on my own, to control the panic and anxiety that I feel. I still have sessions with Ashley when needed, but I am now able to manage my panic, my claustrophobia, my anxiety and my guilt. I can get my breathing from panic mode to 6 to 8 breaths per minute within minutes. I use 5 things, 5 smells, 5 sounds often. I will use mindful activities to occupy myself. Some days only planning an hour at a time. My motto since learning to walk again is safety first. As a human being, I know logically that the accident was not my fault, that I couldn't avoid the other vehicle. But I still suffer with mother's guilt because being a mother means that you protect your children at all costs. What felt like an eternity to me in the minutes before the accident was in fact between 4 and 5 seconds from the time we entered the freeway until the time of impact. I had attempted to avoid the other driver, but between the other vehicles on the freeway and the RMS workers that were exposed on the side of the road, there was nowhere to go, and we were targeted by the other driver. We all have varying degrees of PTSD that we live with every day. When we are in a motor vehicle together, we cannot sit in the same seats. And as much as I know they do not blame me in any way, shape or form, I know that I will never drive Andrew and Steph in another vehicle again. People say that time lessens the pain of memories and that you heal as time goes on. But from my perspective, I constantly have things that confront me most days. But I believe that something wonderful is going to happen all the time. I have several barriers or triggers, and sometimes you succeed in avoiding them, and other times you fall down a rabbit hole and you must dig yourself out. But some you can never get away from. Some of these would seem inconsequential to able-bodied people, but they affect my attempt to lead a normal life. But I believe my biggest barrier is my mind. I did ask several people what they thought my barriers were. Ben, my eldest, believes that my biggest barrier is how my mind perceives other people's reactions to my driving. The largest setback in my mental progression over the last decade was the day that Andrew refused to let me drive him. Ben says, "You were so excited and it crushed you. Part of you worried it was because he didn't trust you. Part of you questioned if he blamed you for the accident." And I would have to agree with Ben because I've only driven my vehicle once since then, but I will again when the time's right. One of my carers, Claire, believes it is trusting others to do what I would have easily done. Having a carer drive me takes a lot of trust, and that trust can be lost very easily. I have new carers go for a drive with Ben, who knows how I will react in the car, and he will tell me whether I will feel safe or not. Otherwise, I won't get in a vehicle with anyone else driving. And while I like my car, since the accident, I've never truly felt safe in any car. Before the accident, I had a very active social life with multiple groups of friends. I loved travelling, hosting dinner parties, going to concerts, musicals and other events. When something major happens in your life, you learn who your real friends are. They will stand by you at all times. Others will fall by the wayside because they don't know how to handle the physical and mental load and just drift away, not because they don't care, but because they find it too hard to see you struggle and fight for normality. Jeanette, another long-time carer and friend, believes the time wasted in booking everyday events or flights is a big barrier. As an able-bodied person, these days you can jump online, you can book your tickets, you can book your holidays in minutes. For me, it is waiting online that is playing a god-awful music while a voice pops over telling you that you can book online. I must be prepared to sit for anything up to 3 hours waiting to be answered. I cannot get up to go to the toilet or get a drink or have something to eat unless it's already prepared, as I cannot walk around while holding a phone. The constant repetitions of the questions for bookings, including companion card numbers, wheelchair specifications or authorisations for lithium batteries that are already supplied and attached to membership cards, only to have to repeat them time and time again. The battle with airport security because you're in a wheelchair, it must be checked and you must be pat down every time. There is always a discussion in regards to my orthotic boots with security as they will want them to be removed, and I refuse as I may not get them back on. Arguments become the normal. Then you endure a flight without having hydrated yourself since the night before, because you're always the last one off the plane no matter where you are seated and your bladder is exploding. Smells are a trigger. Before the accident, I used to go to the pool, exercising and socialising 5 days a week. So I constantly had the smell of chlorine in my vehicle from pool equipment. Once the smell of chlorine gets into anything, it stays, and the smell was there the night of the accident. I cannot get into a pool now unless I shower, scrub myself, wash my hair to get rid of the smell straight away. The smell of dust, mould, stale and damp washing immediately puts me back in the vehicle of that night, and I must avoid those smells. I had a love of jewellery, but imagine, if you will, wearing beautiful rings and having your hands smashed against the dash of a car, your hands immediately swelling while you're being choked by a seatbelt that you can't release because your hands can't be used. Since the accident, I've never been able to wear my rings or necklaces because I immediately feel the choking and swelling in my hands. Yes, it is mind over matter, but it is such a barrier. I still have carers in my home twice a day, 7 days a week, and will for the rest of my life. Everything in my life is planned, every event or appointment. Spur of the moment events are a thing of the past. It isn't cheap to have differing abilities. Constantly my equipment needs to be renewed, things like crutches, bottom wipers, lymphatic garments and wheelchairs. Another special prize is my orthotic boots, these beautiful things. These boots currently weigh 1.8 kilos each, and they are the bargain price of $4,250. They're worth every penny to me, but they have to be replaced at least yearly. Since the accident, I have developed claustrophobia. To be honest, it is partially from being trapped in the motor vehicle, but also from being forgotten one night at the change of shift by a relieving nurse. My room was the furthest from the nurse's station, and the call button was too low from the commode to call anyone. I've never slept in a room with a door closed since, nor gone to an enclosed bathroom with no windows alone unless desperate. The house that I've since purchased in 2016 has 21 windows and 6 large glass doors and no close neighbours. I spoke about nightmares and when they started, but not how debilitating they can be through a PTSD episode. I can get up to 4 nightmares a night for nights on end until my brain resets. It can be after a scare in the car, too much pressure on my health, or if I'm overtired and overthink things. They are always about that night, about the impact of the vehicles, the burning in my ankles and feet, the screams from my children, the choking and the pain. Sometimes it can be the heartfelt apologies and tears of the ambulance driver who was in the back of the ambulance with me begging forgiveness for not being able to give me any pain relief while we were waiting for the helicopter. You cannot imagine what it is like to wake up choking and sobbing, feeling that burning sensation time and time again. But now I have Ivy, my pet's therapy dog. Over the years, she has learnt to sense the nightmares. She will start by nudging me, then pushing on my face, and if I'm deeply affected, she will lay across my chest and her heaviness will wake me. She's 32 kilos. Ivy centres me into the present state straight away. The nightmares are not as often as they used to be, but sometimes that can make them tougher after there have been a long period without any. I started making goals while in hospital. I never asked questions on my abilities. I didn't want negative thoughts getting in my mind. I will often just do something because otherwise you can overthink it. My first goal was to walk again, and I did that. My second goal was to drive again because I had a love of driving that I didn't want the other driver to take away from me. I did this in 2021. Goal 3 was to travel to Europe. I'd actually booked tickets the Friday before the accident to go to Italy and Greece and Turkey the following September. Never made it. I still want to go. I have been blessed with 2 grandchildren since the accident who fill my life with love. I plan to be here to celebrate both of their 21st birthdays. The youngest is only 6 years old, so I plan to be around for a while. I am always setting goals to move forward. And while every day might not be a good day, I must find some good in every day to repay the efforts of my doctors, nurses and my allied health team who have cared for me over the years. I remind myself daily to live life to the fullest. If it wasn't for the support of my sister Di, who was at the hospital most days to protect and fight for me when I couldn't, to Auntie Pam, who was always there and brought nutritious food with her. Without the support of these 2 people and my extended family, I would not have been able to fight the infections or handle the constant operations. or the 15 weeks lying in bed, not being able to move. I will always be very grateful as it helped to keep me stay calm and handle the boredom of lying in bed for so long. To my best friends, you're always in my heart, and I'm grateful that you always have my back. And I will always be grateful to Ben's friends who looked after him and Bindi when he was released from hospital, and to Andrew's in-laws, Steph's parents, for looking after Steph and taking Andrew in while he recuperated in the halo brace. My love for my family knows no bounds, whether I am visiting Andrew, Steph, Liam and Erin in Perth or living at home with Ben, I am always well cared for. Ben, you are an amazing human being with so much patience and kindness. You shoulder so much of my care, but you do it so willingly. I recognise that my story could have been a lot worse, and I am grateful to the bystanders that aided my family that night, and the emergency services, the police, the ambulance and fire brigades for their actions and services. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Now I want to cry.
You need to come up, please.
I don't really need to come up. I don't really want to talk very long. This woman next to me is inspiring. I know sometimes you don't like hearing that, but you are. You're the image of resilience, even though you've suffered so much. And I just highly admire how you've handled this, you know. I think we're both going to cry up here. So, yeah, look, I thought Christine would offer you an insight into the trauma that people do suffer. Obviously, there's a degree of suffering and you know, a complexity. Christine has suffered extremely. She did meet lifetime care requirement or criteria to get lifetime care on the road, but this illustrates a point. And you know, with 60 bones broken, the life dramatically changed. It could have gone much worse, much worse than what she has done. So all I can do is say, look, ask her questions, get to know her mind, because she is the image of someone who has faced dark days, but is now living with the future. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I wanted just to join Ashley just to say thank you so much, Christine, for your generosity in sharing your story. And it was incredibly touching and heartfelt. I think we're all still kind of taking that in. That's why this kind of silence. And thank you, Ashley, as well for sharing your insight. Now we like to open for a Q&A. So if anyone from the audience or online would like to ask a question to Christine, of course, Ashley as well, this is one opportunity for her to share her experience and insights. Anyone would like to start? Fantastic. 2 people over there, Candace?
Hello, Christine. I'm Catherine. I'm a clinical psychologist in spinal rehab. And I really love your story, the resilience that Ashley mentioned, and particularly that looking for something good in every day. But what I was just thinking about to mention is that you said that the staff, when you were in ICU, were really focusing on your physical injuries. I see people when they've come out of ICU, come out of acute and into rehab, and I find that most of our patients are still not ready to think about or talk about or address their psychological injuries. They're so focused on their own physical, And I wonder if you think that that might be partly because of the focus that has to be made when you're so injured, and whether there's anything that we can do to help people start to address the psychological injuries earlier.
The first 7 weeks, my focus was just on physical injuries. No one was pressing me for any answers about the accident or asked me questions about the accident. You would have seen a photo of me lying there on the bed with both legs in plaster, one arm was in plaster. My rib cage was totally broken on both sides, my breastbone, my collarbone on my right side from the seatbelt, and my stomach was very, very swollen. I started getting phone calls once my claim went into the insurance for third party. And these phone calls were consistently every day. Someone would ring my mobile, it would be a different person, and they'd say, oh, we're just ringing up to check on you. And then they would start throwing questions at you. And they were all about the accident. Now, by this stage, I was starting to have a bit of memory about the accident. I remembered coming to after the accident, and there was a girl beside me through the window of my driver's door talking to me, and I remember saying to her, please tell them not to give me morphine. I'm allergic to it. And I passed out. And then I came to again, and Ben was trying to take my seatbelt off me because I was choking. He was able to get my rings off me, and I remembered all of that. It wasn't until I started getting pushed for answers that I started remembering and triggering a lot of memories from that night. And they were coming in nightmares. They were coming when they were putting me to sleep. I was having an operation every 3rd day at this stage. So I wasn't even waking up properly from the anaesthetic before they were getting me ready to put me under another one. So by being so sedated, I constantly was sleeping, and it wasn't a restful sleep. That's when I needed someone to be able to come in and talk to me about how to deal with them. There was no one. There was nothing in the budget to be able to get anyone in for that. The best I got was the social worker, who the nurses contacted one day, I don't know, and I can tell you it was Holy Thursday, and they were getting me ready, and they hung up the phone on this person because they had it on loudspeaker and heard the way this person was speaking to me. And they hung the phone up and took my phone to the social worker and said, you need to deal with these people. After that, whenever my boys came down or Steph came down to the hospital for their checkups, they would come up and we would talk. And because they were the only one that had any knowledge of the accident, I would say to them, did this happen? And they'd go, yes. And that was the most I had in the 6 months I was in North Shore. I ended up with one session at my rehab hospital from a first-year grad, and she said she wasn't prepared to be able to help me because there was too much. And then by the time I got out of rehab and I went through another 3 operations, it was December before I got to see a psychologist regularly. by then everything was traumatic. It was just traumatic. It was like I should have been able to talk about this earlier. And it wasn't there. There was no funding in the public hospital to be able to do that. And I think as a third party, it should have been. There should have been money for someone to come in and see and speak to me. It might have made my life a lot different in the long term. My sister was driving me 2 weeks ago, and she's the person that I trust more than anyone because she's been there through everything. And she was driving and this car pulled out, and I cringed and went into a ball. And she's like, "It's okay." And I'm like, "No." And she was shocked. She was totally shocked because I'm still reacting now when anything happens. And it's not a great feeling. It's not a great feeling to not feel safe. So all I can say is I think the earlier that people get treatment, the better.
Thank
and look
you.
at it, and I understand mine was a long journey. Like, you know, not many people go and spend that amount of time in a hospital before they get to move to a rehab hospital. But even at the rehab hospital, I remember coming down to North Shore for a checkup and coming back up the freeway roughly around the same time that we had the accident, and I cried from the top of the hills before Hawkesbury River Bridge to the rehab hospital. And all the nurse said to me was, "Pull yourself together." And I was like dumbfounded. I went into my room, rang my sister, and I sat on the phone for about an hour and a half crying with her because there was no help there. So things need to change so that long-term PTSD isn't as chronic as it is for people.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Catherine. I think Paul has a question too.
Thanks so much, Christine, for coming along today and talking to us. I found it really illuminating. Particularly, I was going to ask a similar question to Catherine, so I'm going to switch my question now, which is, you know, there's a lot of new technology now with cars, so you're just thinking about your car. Since that time, we've got a lot of more like driver aid devices and that sort of thing, and you know, we're looking at a point where cars will be driverless. I'm just wondering how you feel about that. What do you think about that, considering the nature of your accident?
Can I tell you that my business is a transport business for special needs children. So there is no way on God's earth would I put children in a driverless car. And there is no way myself that I would get in a driverless car. Sorry, I've...
So that gives you no reassurance whatsoever?
No,
okay,
no,
thank you.
If anything, my anxiety level just went up.
All right, thank you
and
so
Paul
much.
Courage, this line was quite full of before this 12 years ago, but he's had stuffing stuffed out of him so many times by being squeezed to death. And the important thing about him is there's five textures on here. And this is the line that my sister gave me the day after the accident. And my granddaughter made me a bracelet that says Nanny to put on it because it belongs to Nanny. And that made the fifth sensation. So when I panic and I'm holding him, you'll feel me go all over him, and I just sometimes will pop him down. But he goes everywhere. On planes, he's gone down to every surgery with me. Anywhere I go, if I go in the car, he comes with me. He stays in the car because my pet's therapy dog, Ivy, loves him and wants to suck on him. And I'm like, it's just a no-no.
Thank you so much. I think we have 1 minute if for one quick question. I think Graham, Ken is coming.
Thank you, Christine, and both of you. I thought I'd give the last minute to Ashley. I've had the experience too of many years as a clinician, and some people still have terrible post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes triggered by even coming back to the hospital. So I guess the question is, in terms of a way forward, is there are there markers or are there assessments? How could we better identify people who are at risk? Not just to, we need to manage people better too, and all the things that Christine's alluded to, but is there a way of identifying people who are at highest risk of PTSD, and probably persistent PTSD that sometimes can be so disabling in itself, let alone all the physical and other emotional and so forth?
You've asked me that. Some of the breakthroughs that I went through, I believe strongly will be if instrumented through further implementation work and science, will dramatically influence outcomes. Like PTSD is incurable, I think. You have to manage it, and like the brain can only take so much trauma, and we know that. There's plenty of evidence for that. So it's really minimising the risk, the damage that's done, and learning, much like having something like that near you, or a therapy dog or family or whatever it is. But yes, I think we can identify risk, and I was talking to Lauren after our first session and saying, we need to think seriously about going to ED, emergency departments, and doing things there that can minimise longer term risk. So I think, yes, we